Welcome to the Business Development Podcast, brought to you by the Global Business Development Association, delivering the strategies and tactics to boost your career and corporate growth.
Hello, BD pros, and welcome to the Global Business Development Association podcast called What is Business Development? So let me ask you, if you think your customers are choosing your product because of features, pricing, or logic, think again. Today, we're going to talk about how the science of marketing psychology and buyer behavior can unlock explosive growth by creating emotionally resonant experiences that convert. Wow, that sounds really exciting to me. I can't wait to jump into it. And if you want to learn about marketing, how it fits with business development and sales and the entire customer journey, well, you can do that as a business developer by going to the GBDA website or Amazon and getting your copy of the Business Development Body of Knowledge. It's everything you need to learn and understand and be competent and work on your proficiency to become a certified business development professional. Okay, let's jump into this show with a fantastic book called Emotional Targeting: Win Hearts, Boost Sales, and Own the Market. And it's written by our guest today, Talia Wolf. And Talia is the founder and CEO of Get Uplift, the conversion optimization agency brands turn to when they want to increase conversion, leads, and sales. Talia helps high-growth B2B SaaS, e-commerce, publishers, and high-growth brands across multiple industries transform their customer journeys by creating emotionally resonant funnels using her proprietary emotional targeting framework that we're going to talk about today, which is in her book. And her team's unique customer-first CRO approach combines behavioral psychology, emotional messaging, and data-backed experimentation to drive scalable results that matter and more sales, higher ROI, and better customer experiences. Recently, she was named one of the most influential voices in conversion optimization. She's spoken to hundreds of stages, including MailChimp's FWD London, SMX, MozCon, Product Hackers, and delivers actionable strategies that challenge conventional CRO thinking. And she's here today to share her wisdom and her strategies with us from her book. Now, this book is no fluff guide, okay? It's used for applying consumer psychology and persuasion techniques across your entire customer journey. Whether you're optimizing landing pages, designing onboarding flows, or revamping your B2B marketing strategy, Talia shows you how to reach the humans before the spreadsheets. And inside, you'll discover how to uncover emotional drivers behind your customers' decisions. Map these emotions to specific touch points in your digital marketing funnel and craft experiences that feel both rational and emotionally satisfying. And folks, I'm sure you're going to be very satisfied with what you hear today from Talia Wolf. So Talia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, it's great. Thank you. And so, Talia, I always like to ask our guests, how did you get into your profession?
It's a great question. I used to work in a digital agency for social media marketing, driving traffic, working on engagement. And one of the things that was really itching at me was, and this is, back in the day, this is over a decade ago, right? I kept asking our clients, okay, great, we're driving all this traffic, but what about sales? What about leads? Do you know how that's going? And oftentimes they didn't actually know, or if they did, we weren't actually getting substantial results. And that's when I started testing stuff, trying different elements on the page, changing visuals, changing texts, reducing forms, adding pop-ups, and just testing to see, hey, what can I do on a website, on a landing page, or in an ad to increase those sales and leads? And that was kind of my intro into the world of CRO, conversion optimization. And yeah, I think that was kind of the step in the door. And then as I did it more and more, I absolutely fell in love with optimization and created my own agency and started building my own proprietary framework to really drive more conversions and really help brands optimize in the best way possible using psychology and emotion.
Yeah, that's great. Well, as the famous quote goes, uh, I spend half of my money on marketing, um, and unfortunately, I don't know which half is wasted. And that was a famous from Mr. Wanamaker, John Wanamaker, and he was the founder of the Wanamaker department stores in 1861. So, the general, and that's the general feeling, right? That we've consistently had within industry is, okay, I'm putting all this money into marketing. I know it's working somehow, but I just don't know which part of it is working. I don't know if people waste 50%, like Mr. Wanamaker said, but it's often very difficult, and it sometimes serves as this point of conflict between marketing, business development, and sales. Hey, marketing, you're creating all these leads, but are they any good? You know,
Yeah.
making progress. And so I really like what your book tries to focus on. So can we jump into a little bit about the overarching framework of your book? Again, going back to the concept here from your book that you talk about, this overarching emotional targeting framework. What is that?
Yes. So I wrote the book, Emotional Targeting, to help brands of all industries to start optimizing with meaningful changes. What I noticed over the course of running thousands of A/B tests is that most marketers and businesses and brands are kind of stuck on this hamster wheel. They have very high goals of leads or sales, and they try all sorts of things on their website. So they try best practices, they try copying from competitors, they hire and buy the best tools in the business, and nothing really seems to work because it's all fragmented. And what happens is marketing, is saying, well, we're driving leads. And as you said, like sales and business development are like, no, these are terrible leads. And it's this cycle. And no matter what you try, you can't get those desired outcomes. And what this whole book is about is the fact that most brands are overly focused on selling their product, their features, their technology, and they're really obsessed with their competitors and just they don't have a clear strategy for optimization. The whole idea is that if you want to get more people to buy whatever you're selling, you have to understand how people make decisions. What is their decision making process? And what we've uncovered, which isn't new, brands and psychologists and neuroscientists have known this for decades, is that people make decisions based on emotion. We buy on emotion and then we rationalize them. And even though we love thinking that we're rational beings, we really aren't. And this is in every single business, whether you're selling toilet paper, if you're selling data security, if you are selling QA software, accounting software, if you're selling dog leashes, if you are a service-based company and you, help people move houses, whatever you're selling, people buy it on emotion and then they rationalize it. If you want to increase conversions, you have to understand the psychological and emotional triggers that drive people to buy from you. And why is this so good? Because one of the biggest issues we have is, sure, any one of us can probably go into a report and see that our website is bleeding money, that we're not driving conversions, or we can see through our emails. But the biggest black box is, what changes do we actually need to make in order to increase conversions? When you understand the psychology of your customer beyond behavioral elements like age, geographical location, gender, devices, when you understand why people buy from you on an emotional level, you can actually pinpoint really easily what's not working on the website, why people aren't converting, what stories you're missing out on, what content isn't working, why the testimonials that you use don't make sense, or what content you need to add or change, or what copy needs fixing, or what design or colors. All of that comes to light when you finally understand your customers better. And that's what this whole book is about. It's about helping you finally uncover why people really buy from you, why your website is bleeding money or isn't converting, and then what to do about it. How can you actually optimize using all these insights?
Yeah. And, Talia, this is fantastic what you're saying. I'm sure the business development pros that are listening to this podcast, this is resonating with them, because in the first few pages of the business development body of knowledge, and actually throughout the entire book, we talk about the fundamental emotional triggers that all consumers feel. Now, these aren't any kind of mysterious things. These are actually all based on science, actually neuroscience. And it all comes down to the fundamental biological imperative that every human has and every living creature on this planet has. And the biological imperative is to survive and thrive. And so in the survive and thrive, um, in mentality, you have four responses encountering any foreign being or any foreign object. And that is fight, flight, freeze, and fuse. That's it. There's four fundamental responses, and those manifest themselves as emotions. The fight is manifested as anger. The flight is fear. The fuse is just, apathy. And then the final is fusing is love. It's having the sufficient trust to say, I want to engage with this person, this entity, this company, this product. This is for me. And so hitting those emotional triggers are rooted not just in the science of marketing, but they're rooted in neuroscience. They're rooted in the fundamental behavior of all human beings. So very powerful stuff, Talia. Let's jump into the top 3 takeaways or tactics that business developers can use, because I know we're talking about marketing and we're talking about using these, say, for your website and whatnot, but business developers, we're creating a lot of content as individuals for our prospects, and we're delivering value to them in order to create trust. And so, in order to create that trust, the value that you provide or the content that you provide has to emotionally resonate with your prospect. So, Talia, tell us, how can we do that?
It's a great question. So the whole process is actually built in 3 stages. Stage 1, which is the first tactic, is actually doing meaningful research. Meaningful research to uncover not just why people buy from you, but how they're feeling right now, what their pains are before finding a solution, how they want to feel about themselves, or how they want other people to feel about them and think about them after finding a solution. What hesitations, concerns, roadblocks may be preventing them from taking action with you, and ultimately what emotions drive their decision making. And the whole research process is built on identifying those things. And once you know that, it is not just a gold mine for marketers. We do a lot of work for professionals in business development and in sales, because what happens is you're talking to people, you're trying to convince them about your product, you're creating content for them, and you're going to have all sorts of people you're speaking to, and they will have all sorts of concerns and hesitations. When they have these insights, it's so much easier to address them or even preempt them, right? So step number 1 is doing meaningful research to uncover that. And you do that with interviewing customers, surveying your customers, something I like to call emotional competitor analysis, which is when we really dive into our competitors and how they're selling and their messaging and their audience. We do that with social listening, being that fly on the wall on Quora, Reddit, LinkedIn, on Facebook groups, on YouTube, really combing through conversations and understanding what people like, what they hate, what they're angry about, what they're looking for, what they're missing. And all of that helps us get to know the emotional profile of our customer and create this compass that everyone on the team can follow and know exactly what to say when someone brings up an objection, what testimonials they care about, what kind of third-party reviews or social proof they need to see, what are the elements that they need to see on a page or read or feel in order to say, yes, this has everything that I need to feel better about myself. So tactic number one is running meaningful research.
Yeah.
Step number, oh, sorry, do you want to?
If we could just pause right there, because there's a lot to unpack, and I'm really excited about it. I think this touches on one section of the book that I highlighted, which I guess your research is really getting down to the fundamentals, and I might be jumping a little ahead here in our discussion, but you talk about this concept of the customer or the prospect's self-image and their social image. And I suppose, really these are the two kind of guideposts as you're engaging and doing research with the prospect, is kind of fundamentally getting to how is my product or my competitor's product influencing the prospect's perception of their self-image and their social image within the community. And then the other great thing I really liked about what you said is you used the word team. And I always like to say, the primary objective of marketing is the awareness phase of the customer journey. It's the time where you, as the marketer, are working to gain the attention of the prospect. That's it. Now, I know in certain companies, marketers are expected to do more in the activation phase. Once you have the prospect's attention, is engaging via content with them so it activates the brand. Now, that is the role of prospect developers, i.e., business developers. And so, what is really helpful, I think, is where those lines are clearly defined in a company. If you have marketers, you have business developers. That team between marketing and BD is extremely powerful, because business development, you're the ones engaging with prospects day in and out, day out. When you're giving that message, you can hear how the prospect is responding. When you are out there in the community, even, and engaging within the community, and you're hearing about how the competitor is communicating, you're hearing what's resonating in the community. You are the boots on the ground in the community. It is your responsibility to go back to marketing and say, hey, marketing, I know our messaging is XYZ, but I'm hearing ABC. I think we need to change our messaging. Or, hey, I talked to a prospect. It's a lead you got us. Okay. I talked to the lead, and their expectation was X, but our message is Y. We have a gap here. And here's what resonated when I talked to them. All of that is valuable feedback to marketers. I've even seen business developers bring their marketers to meetings with prospects, bring their marketers to conferences, and stand there in the booth and hear the pitch and watch. It's actually great to have a third-party observer like a marketer listen and watch, and they're learning, of course, but they're also hearing it in real time. So love to get your feedback on that, Talia.
Absolutely. One of my recommendations for marketers is to actually be that fly on the wall on sales calls and business development calls. So either asking for recordings or showing up for a sales call or going to in-person meetings to hear how these things are happening. And what usually is really interesting, what we find is that when a marketer actually goes and listens to not just one business developer or not just one call, but they show up to 4, 5, 6 different calls with different events, and they hear all the conversations, they will also start to pick up on those trends and those themes. And then they're also able to come up to the business developer and start having this conversation about, here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm hearing. Here's what we're saying. What do you think we should do? Here's these are our goals. How can I help you? And how can you help me? So it really is a great way to communicate and bridge that gap and break those silos.
Yeah. And the other great thing is when you have those inbound leads that come from marketing or just come from the website with no attribution, I think what's great, I've heard this tactic before, so it's not my tactic. I can't claim credit for it, but I think it's a brilliant idea, is that every time that inbound lead comes to a business developer, the business developer should ask, hey, how did you hear about us? And that's, so that this mystery of, well, how much am I generating a return on investment on my marketing? You can do that by asking that customer, having your business developer ask the prospect and say, hey, how did you hear about us? And if they say, oh, well, it was your website, or I heard it from a friend, it was a referral. Okay, great. Now that is the best attribution you could ever have. You're getting it right from the prospect. You're not trying to speculate. You're not trying to track them with cookies and whatnot online. And that's great feedback to marketing as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump into tactic or key takeaway number 2 from the book.
So, the second part of the framework is auditing your website and your assets strategically. So, we started actually just touching about this now, right? So, you've done this research, you've started hearing things, you're starting to see themes, whether your prospects maybe are more aligned with self-image, how they want to feel about themselves, or social image, how they want others to feel about them. And you're starting to see these reoccurring themes of top pains, top concerns, roadblocks from converting. Now, what you want to do is comb through all of those assets, the emails that are being sent, the homepage that people are going to, the product pages. If you're standing and you've got like, even in your booth and you've got marketing leaflets and stuff, and you are actually, what is the messaging? What's missing? And you need to ask yourself a set of questions of, hey, am I making all of my messaging about myself, or is it about the customer? Am I addressing their top pains? Do I actually show social proof they care about? Am I actually showing the outcomes they want? When you do the research from tactic number 1, then it's so much easier to review everything that you have right now in your marketing and see and really see if it's working or not. And that is the next step. And I think it's so much better, because oftentimes what happens is you'll be told that, okay, something in marketing isn't working, something on the website isn't working, or an email isn't working. And then you just go with the current data that you have, and you look at the website and you're like, well, best practices say no 2 calls to action. But you're not looking at your website and the assets from the eyes of your customer. When you have the research that we just spoke about in your hands, it's so much easier to actually identify what's really not working. And that's why it's tactic number 2, or key takeaway number 2, because first you have to do the research, and then everything opens up and it's so much easier to uncover what's really not working.
Yeah, I like this idea of continually auditing as well. You'll start off with your baseline assessment based on the research that you did, but this is a continual evolution of constant improvement to your messaging, because your community and your marketplace is constantly changing. Your competitors are changing, and the technology and the products and the services that are being created are also changing. But I think one really interesting concept you talked about, Talia, is getting those proof points of customer success and feeding that back into your marketing content. And that is so critical. And the big reason is, I often hear people say, okay, we've prospected, we converted the prospect into a customer. Great. Okay, BD marketing, now go away. What do you mean go away? This is the best part of the customer journey.
Yeah.
We need to be in the customer success phase. After conversion, business developers need to be involved. Marketers need to be involved, because we are the ones gathering that information. And then actually, from a business development standpoint, we're helping the customers become a big success. Because at the end of the day, we want them to grow. We want them to enter the growth phase, which means they internally grow and achieve their objectives. But secondly, they help us grow. They become great referral partners. And so having that access to engagement during the customer success and the growth phase, critical information. Wouldn't you agree, Talia, to help you get those proof points?
Absolutely. And what we need to remember is, a lot of times when we use kind of social proof, it's kind of abused in a way. We all know that we need social proof, and it's kind of like a checklist. So we include a few logos, and we have some random generic quotes from customers saying like, this is the best service ever, or we love this product. But honestly, like, the best social proof you can have is one that dismantles objections and concerns that people have. So your role actually as a BD is to go and find those quotes. You're already speaking to the customer, and okay, the number one thing that might be a hesitation or a blocker is people are worried they won't be able to do this themselves, that they'll be stranded, and everything sounds great, but once they buy into your product or your solution, they're left alone and they won't have the technological know-how to do it. Now that you know that this is the biggest roadblock or concern, your goal is to go back to all these conversations that you've had and actually say, oh, look at all these quotes by people who said, in the past, I was worried about this exact same thing, but this person really helped me throughout the whole journey. And you only know that if you're part of the whole journey after they've converted to. So it's a job of a few people.
Yeah. Well, and this is a very timely discussion because I kid you not, Talia, today I had a question from a prospect of says, well, can you tell me how your product has resulted in positive outcomes for your customers? And I looked at all of our customer success data and I provided the data that specifically quantifiably showed proof of not just the customer feedback, but also how they felt about the individual products based on a sliding scale rating system. And so that's perfect proof of how we do this as business developers day in and day out. And then, that feedback now can go back to marketing saying, okay, I think we need more proof points on our website because obviously we're having prospects ask us about this and we're not doing a good enough job probably on our website. Okay, Talia, the final takeaway here, bring it home.
Final takeaway is running meaningful tests. So what often happens, and I mentioned this kind of at the beginning, so this is a good circle around, is that we tend to kind of get worried that things aren't going well. And so we launch all sorts of stuff and we change specific elements and nothing's really working. And then we get on that hamster wheel again. So the key takeaway is actually run meaningful tests. Don't just change a button. Don't just reduce a form field because that's going to get you more leads. What you need to do is take all the insights, take the audit that you just did and hypothesize what big changes and meaningful changes can you make that will actually have an impact on your customers' emotions, on their feelings, on how they want to feel. What are the changes that you can make to your messaging, to your design, to your whole customer journey that could have a real impact? So the idea is stepping away from tactics and being a lot more strategic and sharing those results with everyone. Because even if you don't get those increase in leads, if you run a meaningful test, let's say you have an hypothesis that your prospects are really kind of motivated by their self-image, how they want to feel about themselves after hiring you. And you try that in multiple leaflets, in emails that you send on your website, and it doesn't work. It's great because you can now talk to everyone on the team and say, hey, we tried this angle. This was our hypothesis. This wasn't working. This is what we tried. It didn't work. But now we're going to try X, Y, and Z. So everyone's learning from this test versus you just saying to someone like, change the button from red to blue and doesn't succeed. And like, oh, I guess blue doesn't work. So it's just about learning and testing and learning and sharing all of those results, whether you increase conversions or not, with the whole team.
All right. Well, testing. And I really like about what you said, sharing the results of those tests with everybody. And that's the business developers, that's the salespeople, that's the customer success. The entire go-to-market team needs to understand, hey, we're making modifications to our website or our leaflet content, whatever the content is that's created by marketing and used to create awareness. And then everybody can be on the same sheet of music because, if there's a change to the website, business developers need to know that. We added proof points. We added social proof to the website. Great. I can refer to those in my discussions with the prospects. Like, hey, you have this question about, our proof points and how this enhance the performance of our customers. Yeah, those are on our website. Let me show you real quickly so you can share those with the other members of the buying committee. This is really powerful. Again, Talia, I love how you really bring it to one common team operating successfully to avoid getting on that hamster wheel. And folks, to avoid getting on that hamster wheel, summarizing Talia's top 3 takeaways from her fantastic book is, first, do your research. And when we talk about research in the context of the prospect's self-image and their social image, and understanding exactly how they feel before and after the deal is critical. Second of all, doing an audit. audit how the performance of your marketing in not just the prospecting phase, but also in the customer success phase. And again, having that entire customer journey in the context of the audit. How are we doing each step of the way? And then finally, testing with positive or negative feedback to the entire team. That way, everybody's on the same sheet of music and they're off of the hamster wheel. Now, Talia, I'll say if you abbreviate that as an acronym, which I always like to do, that's research, audit, and test. That spells RAT. So I suppose if folks do not want to be on the rat wheel, not the hamster wheel, but if you want to get off the rat wheel, take these top 3 steps from Talia's fantastic book. And folks, again, it's available on Amazon and it's called Emotional Targeting: How to Win Hearts, Boost Sales, and Own the Market. You can grab your copy, very accessible in Kindle, paperback. And Talia, how can folks follow your work? How can they connect with you?
So there's multiple ways. Obviously, you can follow me at getuplift.co, which is our agency's website, where you can find loads of case studies and content that you can bring back to your team to sell them on this approach. And there's loads of free guides and things that you can download from there. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, where I share weekly case studies and just teach exactly what we did, how we tested it, what we learned from it, and what you can apply to your own work. And yeah, reach out to me on all social media. And I'm there.
All right. Well, Talia, again, thank you so much for everything you do for the marketing profession, but also for us business developers. We really appreciate your work. And folks, reach out to Talia. She's a wonderful person, a thought leader in the marketing space. And in particular, her book. Again, her book is called Emotional Targeting. It's available on Amazon. Grab your copy today. Thank you, Talia.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Business Development Podcast. Join our free community of corporate partners and business development professionals advancing the art, science, and ethics of the business development profession at gbdassociation.org.